Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Tiffany, the Happy Homeschooler. Today's video is all the books that we read in December. These are the school books that I read to my kids, as well as the books we read for fun throughout the month. So I follow the Sonlight curriculum. Some of them are older curriculum, so if you're watching this and you're thinking like that's not what we're reading this month, it might be a different core or a different year. However, I'm also kind of like reading them as we get to them, and I'm sticking mostly to the timeline that Sonlight has, but not 100% because I'm a homeschooler, so I like to be somewhat flexible. The very first book that I want to talk about is probably my favorite one in this list. Well, close to it anyway. Okay, it was The Sherwood Ring. Now, I was reading this to my 7th grader and it is amazing. This author is Elizabeth Marie Pope, and I immediately, as soon as I finished this book, I got on and ordered the next one. It's not a series, but I wanted to find all the books by this author because she wrote this story and it was so well done. First of all, I don't read a lot of I'm gonna say supernatural books. I don't read a lot of books that say maybe there's ghosts in them or something like that. That's just not my thing, right? This book I would never have picked up because when I read the back and it said newly orphaned Peggy Graham is caught off guard when she arrives at her family's ancestral estate, and she sees she gets introduced to the ghosts in the house, which is just not my go-to thing, right? And I was kind of surprised that Sonlight put it in there because Sonlight is a Christian curriculum and I just don't see a lot of that, right? Because it was supposed to be historical fiction, is what I thought. It is historical fiction. It's just told in a different way and it's actually incredible. I loved the book. My son loved the book. I mean, we were laughing out loud. We were gasping when certain things happened. I will give no spoilers, but this book is a must read. If you have a young child, they should read this book. And even better, you should read it to them because it was so funny, and I don't want to give anything away, but she gets to see the world through their eyes and hear their story told in first person from the ghost in the house. And so that's what I'm gonna say about this book. It was just a favorite. I think I imagine at the end of the year when I give my recap of all of my favorite books, this will be in that list because it would take a lot to upgrade from this. It was just such a good book. The next one I read with my daughter was The Witch of Blackbird Pond, which is a favorite of mine. If you saw my 3rd grade books, what we're doing for my 3rd grader this year, you will see that I recommended this book also for my middle grade readers. It's such a good book. It's a great story. It's by Elizabeth George Spear, and she writes a couple of other really good historical fiction novels, which I would totally recommend. But this one in particular, we really enjoyed. Again, I've read it a number of times. I've had it since I was 10. So great read, definitely recommend. The next book we read was Owls in the Family. Owls in the Family is a really fun story about a little boy, and it's written by the boy as an adult. So it's in Canada, and he ends up finding owls and then he gets to keep them in his home. It's a really fun story, and there's lots of silly experiences. So each chapter something kind of funny happens. It's almost like each chapter is a short story in itself. Yeah, so definitely loved this book. My 1st grader who I was reading it to really enjoyed it. We kind of ended up pulling it out as a family book because everybody stopped what they were doing to sit and listen every time I read. So we just have been doing it as a family book. And in fact, I loved it so much my sister got me a necklace. Let's see her. She got me a little owl necklace because we all love owls now because of this book. The other book that I read to my 1st grader this year was kind of more of a historical, non-fiction book. It was about Joy Ritterhoff, who was a missionary, and she was first in Honduras, and then she ends up getting sick and having to go back to the States. This is during World War II. And she wants to continue the mission work, right? So she starts doing recordings. And at the time, you can imagine, it's not like today where you can just, sit down and record a video on your phone. No, this was a huge process. And I was really impressed with how intriguing this book was. Not only for me, who could fully understand the timings and the different traveling that she went on. I could understand the difficulty behind it, and I don't know if my kids would be able to understand that quite as well, but it was so well written by Betty Ann Hockett, and she did a great job of making this easy to comprehend and still telling an incredible story. This is another one that ended up all the kids wanted to listen to it because it was just so engaging. There is a number of books you can see, and we're going to be getting more of these. I'm going to see first book comes with Sonlight because I don't want to have duplicates of too many. This was just really good story about spreading the word even amidst difficulties, and she just kept praying and she kept having joy, and my kids loved it. We really enjoyed this book. All of us enjoyed this book. And then for my kindergartners, so I'm going to show you my kindergartners books, and then I'm going to show you the ones that we read out loud as a family throughout the month of December, which were awesome. Okay, so my kindergartner here, we got to read out loud. Here's a penny. I've read it, this is like my third time. I love this book. And it makes me cry like every chapter, but immediately, like I'm pages in and I'm already like having to hold back the tears. And I've read the story like so many times. So I don't know why it's so moving, but it really is a wonderful story about a little boy named Penny who is adopted. Right away at the very beginning, he's being teased for being adopted, and he's being told like he's not his parents' real little boy. And that's what makes me cry, because I have a child that's adopted, and I 100% feel like he is my husband's real little boy. And he's our real little boy, so whenever I read it, I get a little bit emotional, but this book is adorable and it's really sweet. I don't think that the children who haven't been through that maybe wouldn't be like traumatized, but if you do have a child that has been adopted, it could be traumatic, because I just think like it can be a little bit of it's just like a touchy subject, I guess, so be aware of that. But this book is so precious, so sweet, and I absolutely love it. Definitely recommend it, and of course the kids loved it because it's just a really good read. I knew my 5-year-old would enjoy it because I've read it to the other kids and they've enjoyed it. Okay, so it was December, so we read some Christmas books. Of course. But the very first book that I have to shout out to is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. If you have never read this book as an adult, and I'm finding out that not a lot of people have, or rather, maybe a lot of people haven't. I don't know if not a lot of people have, but a lot of people haven't. They've all seen the movie, and here's the truth. I hated the movie. I hated the movie, but the book is incredible. You should totally read the book, and if you haven't already read it, like if you didn't read this last Christmas, you should just read it now in preparation to get it and read it again like next year. But I bought this for $1 at a consignment store or whatever, like a year ago after Christmas. And I started reading it out loud to my children because I decided, you know, it's a Christmas Carol, it's a classic, I should read it out loud. I had no idea how interesting, how funny, how engaging this book was. I could not believe how great it was. So I definitely recommend it. I could just imagine Charles Dickens like standing out there, like reading his book to the masses, because that's how he like shared his work in the beginning, was standing out there and like reading out loud for people. Anyway, I definitely recommend this book. And then we have the Usborne version of it, which is just like a really simple, but my kids laid on the floor and like looked through the pages as I read the unabridged version out loud to them. Then we watched the movie, and you guys, the movie is like completely different after you read the book. It's like so much better. It's 1,000 times better. I actually loved the movie after having read the book. So I don't really know what happened there, but I definitely recommend reading the book and then watching the movie, because it like feels like a completely different experience after you have read Charles Dickens' words and the humor behind it. I did not know it was going to be so funny. And if you have really little kids, you should let them watch the Mickey Mouse version, because then it's even like less scary. But it's not scary. The book isn't scary at all. And then once you read the book, the movie's not scary either. Another book that we got for the Christmas season is The Grinch, because it's The Grinch and you have to have it. But also, I love the message behind it. And I even got like a quote of it to put out during the Christmas season, because I just think it's so sweet that he finally like learned the true meaning of Christmas, and it's about what's in your hearts. And so I definitely recommend reading this book all during Christmas next year when it comes around for you guys. So little kid book that we read, I got Little Critters. So my kids are 5, 7, 8, and 12. So this was obviously more for the 5, 7, 8-year-old, but it's still sweet, and my 8-year-old read it out loud to my boys. And we just enjoyed, I liked the lessons it teaches. I liked Little Critter, and I liked the Little Blessings collection. So we read this during Christmas this year, during December this year. The next book, second to last book, the next book I read was The Magicians Nephew. My son has read these books, my kids have watched the movies, but I have never read out loud to my younger kids any of the Chronicles of Narnia books. And I felt kind of guilty about that. So I decided to start reading them out loud. And I love it. I really am enjoying reading it out loud to them. I would say that the 8-year-old and the 12-year-old are enjoying it more. I think it's still a little bit hard. I think maybe it's the way that C.S. Lewis writes. It's just a little bit harder to like grab the attention of the 5-year-old and the 7-year-old, which is funny because I would have thought that like the Redwall series would have been harder as well. There's a lot of dialogue that is sometimes hard to read. If you've read those books, you'll know what I'm talking about, but there's like argumenti, and there's a lot of dialogue because he does different like words for the different animals in his books, and this one isn't like that. C.S. Lewis writes very clearly, and I enjoy his story a lot. I love the stories, but I just think like the younger two weren't able to get into this one as much as I had hoped they would. So I'll try with them again when they're a little bit older, but for now the 8-year-old and 12-year-old are still enjoying it. Okay, and lastly is Dragon Slippers, and I will say that this right now, probably the 8-year-old and the 12-year-old are also the two that are enjoying this. My 8-year-old can read this, but it's a pretty big, like hefty book, and so it was taking her a little longer than she wanted. So I started reading it out loud to her. We're actually doing a book club on it. I will give you guys an update on that. This will be the first book club I'm running, and I'm planning to do it through the entire year of 2021. I'm going to be doing a book club with middle graders, so ages about 10 to 13. And we're going to be doing some books like this. I don't have all the list yet, but when I have the list, I'll share that with you guys. If you want to read along and share your thoughts, that would be awesome. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Dragon Slippers, really fun, really fast, easy read, but well, I should say easy for me, easy for my older son, not as easy for the younger kids. But it's a really fun story about a girl who, she's an orphan and she has to leave her home for whatever reason. I don't want to give away anything. However, she meets dragons along the way, and I will leave the rest up to you. But we will be doing this book club book next, like in a few days. So I'll definitely post how that's going in an upcoming video. So thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.